Okay guys, we should be sounding a little bit better here. Let me back off that music, and I'll just read over this video. Yeah, one problem with Windows 10 is it's got a nasty habit of resetting levels, resetting devices, and obviously if we've been away for 7 weeks, we're going to have problems because of that. So yeah, my video switcher is also not working correctly, so we're just going to be kind of fumbling through this presentation. Okay, let me close down some windows and get on to our show now. So anyway, good to have everybody back. A little bit of trivia. I don't know how many of you are familiar with digital atmosphere, but about 95% of it was written between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So obviously I work pretty late at night, and I'm probably a little bit of a workaholic, and there are some problems that come with that, and we all know that overwork is kind of unhealthy, and I think the problem with that is a lot of us who are workaholics, we don't really recognize when we need a break. And it's like, you know, you notice that like the wheels were coming off the bus and things are going wrong here and there, and then you start having problems with sleep, and that's a little bit of what's been happening over the past summer. So we've had to take this break here, and also, you know, all the hours editing and pulling together materials, that's really added up over time. So let me go ahead and switch to the charts. Make sure that's working. Yeah, there it is. Got the device manager open, so you can look at a little bit of SPC there. Yeah, okay, let's see here, get this in place. So yeah, we're getting past the end of the doldrums here, so we're going to start having some weather to look at, and indeed, you can see right down there in North Texas up to Arkansas, we've got a little bit of an outflow boundary there. And it's good to see something different, because we've been locked into this pattern that we had over the spring and early summer. I don't know if you all remember it, but it kind of looked like this on the upper level charts, kind of a big ridge out over the western U.S., upper level low in Quebec, and we just had this constant northwesterly flow, and it was kind of a dry northwest flow. We didn't have much moisture return coming in from the south, so there wasn't much to look at, and it really felt a lot like Groundhog Day there. So anyway, we are back, and yeah, Patreon donations have gone down, not surprisingly. They're down about 40%. It's understandable. You know, we didn't know when or if we were going to return, and I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. So, you know, if you're enjoying it at some point later on, you can go ahead and start chipping in again. And once the patterns get really active, we will start rolling out those supporter-only perks. But 60% of you guys did keep sending in the Patreon donations, and I do appreciate it. And that includes Alexi Walsh, Burl Henry, Edward Davies, John Booma, John Huntington, Joseph Grusing, Kevin McKinney, Michael O'Neill, Michelle Curlin, Paul Tikowski, Robert Vermillion, Sarah Wood, Steve Witt, and Thomas Fortner. Those are our followers that have hung in through the summer months, and I do appreciate it. The live stream is not funded by my software or my books. It's kind of its own thing, so yeah, your support is definitely appreciated. So let's start into the charts here. There's that front coming in through southern Oklahoma there, outflow boundary out through the Dallas and Texarkana area. And we've also got the monsoon pattern there across New Mexico and Arizona. That's in full force. So there's not a whole lot to look at on the maps, but that's pretty typical for August. And let's take a look at the plots. Now this is interesting, because if you look up in the northwest U.S., it's 107 at Walla Walla. So the whole Columbia River Basin there, very warm temperatures there, 93 at Portland, and even 86 showing up there north of Seattle. So things are definitely very warm through that area. We'll look at the upper level charts and see what's going on there. Temperatures are close to seasonal normals in the southwestern U.S. They have cooled down a lot from the past 2 weeks here in Texas. Things remain pretty warm up in the northern plains, and then out to the east, things are a little bit mild as they've been over the past 9 to 10 months. Temperatures only in the 70s and a couple of 80s right there in the Baltimore area. Okay, back to the charts. Let's check that out there. SPC chart there showing the remains of some showers there through East Texas. And that is actually that sea breeze coming northward. And we can see that on the satellite picture. And I'm going to run this back a little bit so we can really see what happened there. And rolling that back, there's a little outflow boundary right there around the College Station to Seguin area. And that's pushing northward early this afternoon there. And there's an other outflow boundary right through here. So those are the two things to watch there. A lot of times you'll be tempted to actually look at the precip there, but the important stuff is the boundaries, of course. So let's roll that forward. And there it is. You can see it surging northward and producing a few new cells. There's one there near Crockett. But we're starting to lose the heating, and just one little last cell out east of Jacksonville, and that's pretty much it. These are strongly diurnal. And then up to the north, we can see another outflow boundary right through here. This is more dynamically driven. That's showers near that cold front up there in Oklahoma. And if we roll that forward, there's some cirrus from the overnight convection. And then, I don't know if we produced any showers. Yeah, there's one there east of Abilene. But it looks like the capping is kind of holding together a little more strongly up to the north. Out to the west, we can see the monsoon out there in New Mexico, out through the Guadalupe Peak area. And we do notice that those anvils are spreading, so there's a little bit of upper level support with those thunderstorms there. So we'll look for that on the upper level charts. National map looking like this at this hour. Let's roll that forward, and you can see the monsoon activity down there in New Mexico. Things are pretty clear up in the northern plains, and that's partly due to some dry air coming out of Canada. And then we can see some smoke up there in North Dakota, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and that's due in part due to those fires in California. There's been some fires burning since about the 24th to about the 25th of July. And that's been spreading a lot of ash and smoke up to the northeast there. And then out to the east, some showers along the Appalachian region. There they are right there. A lot of it orographically driven, but a few showers out over the lower terrain of North Carolina and Virginia. Okay, so now we go into the charts. Let's do that. This time of year, we want to look at the 200 or 250 millibar chart. And we can see the main polar front jet well up to the north. Still got that northwesterly flow in that region. And then another segment rounding the base of that trough. It does look like, yeah, there's some 30 knot winds there over the Four Corners area. That's helping to ventilate those storms in New Mexico. And let's see what things look like at 500 millibars. Pretty light flow. In fact, Tucson under easterly flow. So this is starting to reflect the subtropical high over the Four Corners area. And looks like another segment possibly, I would probably put that way down there in Old Mexico. You can see the northwesterly flow coming into the Great Plains there. Probably a little upper level front somewhere in that region. Let's see, where would that be? Very weak. Yeah, it only falls from about -8 up to -11 there. So possibly a weak cold front. It's at 500 millibars running something like that. And then down at 850, we can see the tropical flow coming in from the Gulf. So there's 20 to 25 knot winds there across much of Texas. That's helping to bring in some moisture. And here's another way to visualize it: trajectories. I plotted some reverse trajectories for Dallas. So this is starting with the parcels that are over Dallas. The red is at about 500 millibars, which is about 1,500 feet. The blue is up at about That's going to be about cloud-based level, probably about 5,000 feet. And then the green right there, that's going to be up at about 10,000 feet. So we can see we've got pretty deep trajectories coming from the Caribbean and Cuba and Dominica there. So that's more evidence that we are bringing better moisture up to the north. Let's see. Now, another way we can check that out is precipitable water, especially this time of year. That's very important. So the green here showing, we'll start with this first band right here, this light green. That's going to be about 1 to 1.5 inches. And then we get into that darker green, that's going to be 1.5 inches to 2. And then right there on the Red River, that's above 2 inches. So we've definitely got some rich moisture coming northward. And let's see, where's my drawing tool? I think let me try to get that back. Hang on just a second. There we go. So this is the moisture feeding northward onto the Texas and Louisiana coast right there. And it looks like that feed will continue for the next week and a half. So it looks like some precip chances over the next week to 2 weeks there. Kind of maybe a little bit of a rainy pattern setting up, and that's definitely very good to see in August. Then that brings us to fronts. We don't usually find a whole lot of fronts out there at this time. We're under the influence of the Bermuda High. There it is right there, kind of nudging into the Gulf Coast area. It does look like there's probably an indication of a front up in northern Canada. So about like that right there. And that's really about all I see. Let me take a look at chat, make sure the sound is running okay. Let me back up and take a look here. And I'll just skim quickly through the messages. And yeah, I appreciate the comments there. David Lumbert, Patrick Motes. Big time storm, possible supercell north of Brett Dean. Yeah, some familiar names back there in chat. Windows 10 messed up the audio for Justin Pulliam there. Yeah, I'm going to have to start testing out some of the, maybe do a dry run before the webcast every night. That'll help fix that stuff. And let's see, Jeff Krob checking in, Carl Berghoff. And let's see how the stream looks. Let me drag this window in. And I always look at that dropped frames there, and we've got 0, which is good. Okay, good deal. All right, let's press on with the rest of the overview. I guess we can go region by region. We haven't done that in a while. You can see Death Valley right there. There's the heat showing up as kind of a white color. So yeah, they're up in the 110s, and let's run that forward. Not much of any air mass change in that part of the country. Yeah, almost 120. That's definitely some hot weather there. Looks like most everything is driven by, looks like maybe a thermal low, maybe over the eastern San Joaquin Valley right there. And you can see that flow coming in like that. See that wind field right there? That's kind of outlining that thermal low across California where they're getting that drought weather. Northwestern U.S. Get that centered a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Well, definitely got that cold, that very warm weather. Let's run that forward. Almost 110 degrees right there in eastern Washington. But we've got cool air moving onshore. And let's see if that makes it inland. Not really. Pretty slow going. Even tomorrow, almost 90 degrees in Seattle. And it looks like things do cool down there for Friday. Only 84 for Seattle. So, yeah, now we're starting to bring in some cool weather. And this time of year, that'll often bring stratus and fog in through the passes around the Columbia River area right there into Seattle. So that could bring an increase in clouds through that area, Portland and Seattle. But more warm weather for Friday there inland. For Texas, The mesoscale model showing the outflow boundaries up to the north. Doesn't show the sea breeze so well, but that's pretty typical. And let's see what happens overnight. Looks like new cells west of Fort Worth. And you can see that outflow boundary right around dawn, ending up from about Longview to Tyler, out to about Waco and out to Abilene. So that could set the stage for more development in that area tomorrow. So let's see what happens tomorrow. Those boundaries are still out there. One cell gets going out west of Waco. And then we heat up. Can definitely pick out that outflow boundary right there from Shreveport out to Tyler. And looks like, yeah, more cells going up in central Texas. And there they go. There's those outflow pools. The mesoscale models are excellent for that. And now you can see the boundary ends up a little bit further south. So that may set things up for the I-10 Houston-Austin area for tomorrow. I mean, for the next day, for Friday. So let's run that forward. Yeah, there's a big cluster right there around Temple, kicking that outflow boundary all the way down to San Antonio. So yeah, we should have a lot to look at for tomorrow. Elsewhere, not much going on in the northern plains, just kind of hot and dry. Lots of downslope flow there, so warm temperatures there in Montana. Southeastern U.S., we've got a few viewers out in that area. Looks like southerly, maybe southwesterly flow through much of Florida. And most of the precip tomorrow is going to be focused around Atlanta all the way back to Birmingham and maybe around Columbus, Mississippi. So likewise, there it is, outflow. And then the next day, looks like things are shut down a little bit more, but some development out in Mississippi there. And let's see, Midwest, cover that area real quick. There's a lot of areas to cover, but yeah, there's a good example of downslope flow. You can see the westerly winds right there in southern Iowa, northern Missouri. Air moves west to east and goes downhill. We get that adiabatic warming and temperatures up to almost 100 degrees there. And yeah, it looks like there's a outflow pool or a cold front surging southward tomorrow night. And there it is, moving southward and blending into the morning temperatures. I don't know, I can still pick that out right there. So that's either a weak front or an old outflow boundary right there. So that would be an area to watch for Friday. So let's see if that fire, yeah, there it goes. These are all showers and thunderstorms all the way from north of Cincinnati to Indianapolis, out to St. Louis, and all the way to Wichita. So if you're flying cross-country, you may find yourself weaving through some of those cells during the day on Friday. And then that brings us to the northeast U.S. I don't know if we have any viewers out there. I know Jeff Krob is out there in eastern Maryland. But let's see how things look for tomorrow. Warm up into the upper 80s and lower 90s. And looks like maybe some development out over the Appalachians mostly. Looks like some very spotty development out there. I can see a few specks. But you can see the plains, eastern seaboard right there, not showing much outflow. So it looks kind of dry in that area. And then up to the north looks like a cold front parking itself over New York and Pennsylvania, keeping things kind of cool up in that area there. Yeah, I'd be curious if we have anybody watching from east of New York City or east of Albany, New England. I don't know if there's anybody up there. So anyway, let's press on and let's look at the soundings, get reacquainted with that right there. Forward sounding showing conditionally unstable. Don't see any capping there. See a little bit of warm air aloft, but this is a good pattern for showers. You can see how moist it is down here in the lower levels. If we lift that with afternoon temperatures just over 90. So you can see we clear that cap pretty easily, and we get some decent cape. It's long, skinny cape, but it's definitely cape there. And you can see the equilibrium level up to about 43,000 feet, and that would probably top the sails out at about 50,000. And a little bit of dry air, and that's going to definitely help with cold pool generation. That's going to come to the surface, get entrained in those downdrafts, and help them gust out even more. So a couple of good factors there for gusty afternoon showers. And then the other ingredient is the wind flow. See that right there? Winds out of the south at about 20. That spells good storm relative inflow. I can see by the column here, this storm motion is going to be maybe northwest to southeast. So that means that those cells, when they're moving southward, they're going to be really hitting this low-level air. It's going to be coming directly into the cells like a big conveyor belt, and that's going to help sustain that activity. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to the overnight forecast, look at the high resolution rapid refresh. This is all diurnal activity, okay? So that's that old outflow boundary. And let's hang on a second. I'm getting a disconnection notice from OBS. I think we're still running. Okay. Anyway, Windows 10 gave me a notification about OBS dropping, so I think we're okay. All right, so let's see. Just after dusk, we're going to see a few cells developing in the Dallas and Abilene area. And look at how the coverage increases as we get to midnight. So that's largely that good storm relative inflow feeding these cells, and also the very limited capping. And you can see the activity just increases all the way up to about 1 to 2 in the morning, and you can see the cell motion is to the southeast. So indeed, this is northwesterly flow activity. And northwesterly flow activity this time of the year tends to be nocturnal. So you can see these cells persist until about 7, 8, 9 in the morning, and then they start shutting down a little bit, but we're going to see regeneration out in this area tomorrow. So it is going to be kind of active across North Texas tonight, especially west of Dallas. So that'll give some of you some stuff to look at. Upper level patterns, this is showing one component of the northwesterly flow activity and the strong ridging across the west coast, and this is helping to create some of those very warm temperatures there in the Snake River Valley and the Columbia River Valley area. So what kind of changes are we going to be looking at? Well, subtropical high looks like that's going to be shifting northeastward. So that's going to bring a lot of warm weather to Yellowstone, Montana, Wyoming. And then we get this trophy pattern across Texas, and that'll help generate more showers and thunderstorms over the next week or so. And then going into the long term, let's look at that. This only goes to about 84 hours, but looks like a pretty strong trough sinking into the Great Lakes area. So that'll help generate some cells out there towards Sunday and Monday. Probably an active weather pattern out in that area. And let's see if I've got any other frames for later. No, just the surface charts. We'll kind of go over that in a minute. Let me see if I've got any other frames I've forgotten. Yeah, hurricanes. Let's check that out. Well, it is pretty quiet out in the Atlantic. Not anything going on. And if we look at the 5-day graphics, there's just not much going on. And let me see if I can bring up my yeah, let's see here. Yeah, this will give us a way of looking at what's coming off the African coast. It's pretty quiet out in the Atlantic. This whole corridor, this is kind of what we watch there for hurricane development, and it is very, very quiet. In fact, we got to go all the way to the West African coast there to find a wave. That's probably one right there, and then looks like maybe a couple way out there. This is probably the 2 to 3 week point, so it's going to be a while. We are getting towards the peak of hurricane season. That tends to peak around September 9th or 10th when the sea surface temperatures are highest. So maybe in a couple weeks we'll have something to look at. The other thing is the dust. This is aerosol optical depth. You can see a lot of dust there over the Caribbean islands. And if we roll that back, you can see that big cloud of dust coming from the African coast. So that got generated probably about 1 or 2 weeks ago. So anyway, it's been gradually moving eastward, and this first punch of it has kind of diffused a little bit. Some of it's kind of embedded in that cloud material, but here's part 2. So that looks like that's probably going to graze Florida right there, and then maybe some of that will end up in the Gulf, maybe in about 4 or 5 days. If that makes it to Texas, we're just going to have kind of a hazy pattern out there. And indeed, you saw earlier, skies were pretty blue out there. Okay, so let's go ahead and head into the rest of the forecast. Yeah, we were going to check out that hurricane. There's Hurricane John, Category 1 storm. And I've got the global lightning mapper strikes, and let's see, I had that up earlier, and it was showing pretty much nothing in that storm there, in that hurricane. So it is pretty... There's a lot of rain in there, but other than that, not a whole lot going on in that, and that's going to continue pushing up to the northwest over the next 3 to 4 days. Okay, so we're about 35 minutes in. Let's go ahead and pull everything together. And I think a good chart to look at would be this precipitable water. Okay, so rolling forward, lots of precipitable water across Texas, Oklahoma there. Looking at values of about 1.5 to 2 inches. If we had a drier pattern, we would have more of this cyan color across Texas. So we've definitely got a favorable pattern. There goes John right there. And then over the next few days, it's just going to be kind of a repeat of development across Texas, Louisiana right there, wherever there's outflow boundaries. And let's look for the next big change. Not much of anything. Looks like maybe later in the week, though, a series of highs come out of Canada. And here's one right there over Manitoba. There's a stronger one coming in from British Columbia. And yeah, here's a pretty strong one coming in for late next week. This is a strong cold front coming in for the 17th and 18th. And there it is surging southward. This is going to have a pretty good punch of cold air, and that's heading mostly into the northeast and the Midwest region. But even in Texas, these fronts do tend to be important along the tail end, because that's a boundary. It may not bring much cold air, but we can definitely get thunderstorm generation along those tail ends. And as we get cold pools developing, that can reinforce the activity on successive days. So it does look like a kind of a wet pattern coming up here for the next 2 to 3 weeks maybe. And you can see the precipitable water is still pretty high, even 360 hours out, 23rd. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of chances for rain here. Okay, so I think that's about all I got here. Let me just flip through these charts, see if I forgot anything. Yeah, I'm basically going through the charts, going through the program, dusting everything off, because, you know, we've been off for about 49 days, and I'm going to have to fix a few things after we get off. But yeah, this is the colorized air mass imagery from College of DuPage. I've been looking at some of these products that they have here. I don't know if any of you have gone to College of DuPage, but they've got this satellite interface. You go to satellite and radar, and then you click on this Go 16 viewer, and they've got some really neat stuff in there. Now, this air mass product, this is a composite of about 5 different channels. And I've been trying to kind of figure out how to use this, because we haven't had anything like this with previous GOES products. And I'm finding that with this product, yeah, red does tend to mean dry air, green does tend to mean moist air. However, I'm finding really it's the gradients that are important, like around here. And I'm finding that those are a signal to look at the skew-t's and find out why there's a gradient. So in this example, I might look at Aberdeen and compare that with the Quad Cities. I'm likely to see some sort of difference between the two. If I look at Rapid City and Bismarck, I'm probably not going to find much of a difference there. So that's probably how I would go about using these. There's not a whole lot to look at right now, but as we get into storm season, this may help us find a few things going on aloft that we need to be looking at. Okay, let's see here. I think that's all I've got. One last look at the satellite imagery. Things are shutting down. A few cells going up there around, looks like south of Wichita Falls out towards Graham and Throckmorton. And we're going to see that increase over the next 6 hours there. So a lot to look at tonight for the Dallas and Abilene area. Okay, that's about all I got. Let me check in on chat. Take one last look there. Monsoon season spectacular. Thanks to Rat for that. Oh yeah, the Perseids. Yeah, we're at that point where we're going to have a bit of a meteor shower tonight. Usually the best viewing is after midnight. If I remember correctly, Perseids, I think, though, that rises after dawn or after midnight. Don't hold me to that. I'm going by memory here, but most of the spectacular displays I've seen have been with the Leonids, and those are in November. I've never really seen much with this August Perseid storm, or shower, but who knows? You all might luck out. So head out tonight, see if you can see that there, unless you're underneath this cirrus canopy there. All right, I guess I'll go ahead and sign off and get all this stuff fixed here. So you all take care, have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. So let me bring the sound down. There we go. All right, take care, have a good evening, and hopefully y'all get some rain there. Bye-bye. There we go.